that era. And that's it on Public Intel Africa Security Trends. Up next is Public Intel Global Affairs. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In 2021, the global average price of gasoline at the pump was about $1.03 per liter, a 26% increase from the previous year, exceeding pre-COVID-19 pandemic levels. Following crude oil prices hike in early 2022, many governments put measures in place in order to reduce the burden on households. Decoupling the price from crude, such as most countries like in Italy in April 2022, in all countries, prices at the pump are influenced by spot crude oil prices and regulation frameworks. Governments can let retail prices float freely or fix them. In countries where the end user price is closely controlled, it often doesn't reflect crude oil prices fluctuation. Global energy security risks have increased sharply, and because of steeply rising oil import demands in developed and, more importantly, developing countries, the narrowing margin between oil supply and demand, which has driven up prices, the volatility of oil prices arising from international tension, terrorism, and war. To discuss this with me, I am joined live via a Zoom call with Commodore David Nabeda, who is Public Intel Global Affairs Security Analyst. Commodore, welcome on board. It's good to have you.
Thank you very much, Corey.
Yes, please, I would like to know, are there threats the world is facing in relation to security and global fuel hike?
You're talking about the problems of fuel hike and global security. Fine. Like I said, prior to this time, we had the COVID-19 lockdown, which affected virtually all countries of the world. And that led to very low economic activity, and which really created a lot of challenges for people. And as the world was beginning to open up, the war in Ukraine started. But coupled to that, the demand for resources increased. And as a result, prices escalated, products. And it wasn't limited to just one country. Europe, America, everywhere got affected, with the exception of a few countries that have these resources in abundance, like in the Middle East, Russia, and then a few other countries like probably Iran. But otherwise, everywhere we have fuel hikes. Like in Nigeria, where we have shortage of refining capacity, we have to import these refined products. And of course, the cost is based on what is available at the spot market for refiners to buy and process. So we buy these things at very high cost, and thereby we started experiencing serious energy crunch. And prices of diesel, PMS, everything escalated, thereby generating a lot of fuel queues, which of course heightened tension. And this was the same experience other parts of the world were going through or have been going through. So there's been a price escalation all around, thereby escalating tensions and generating conflicts. So clearly there's a direct linkage between the fuel hikes and, of course, tension and insecurity globally.
All right. Yes, moving forward, the inability of countries, to forge a common approach on energy security is due to the significant divergence in the energy mix, which can be politically motivated in terms of industry structure and availability of domestic energy resources, particularly of crude oil and natural gas among countries, in differences in access to alternative energy imports, geopolitical influence, and energy policy orientation, and of course the differences in capacity, disposition, and willingness of countries to deal with international issues, either on a bilateral and multilateral basis. Now, Commodore, having known this, I would like to ask, how do we reconcile energy security risk with global security?
Fine. When we talk about energy security, like I said before, what we're talking about three critical variables. And these are: one, accessibility; two, availability; and three, affordability. So for you to be characterized as somebody who has energy security, you have to have good, unimpeded access to energy resources in their various mixes. That's number one. Two, these energy resources have to be available. That means you don't have at any point in time where you are going to have any crunch, either in terms of costs or in terms of availability of resources where you can easily get to. Then three, affordability. It has to be affordable to meet your economic costs. So where any of these factors or any variables is impacted adversely, it is bound to affect your energy security. Now, there's hardly a nation that can describe itself as completely secure in terms of energy resources. And fundamentally, energy is the prime motive, the prime driver of economic activity. So the well-being of people and the wealth of nations is based upon energy security. And therefore, it has shaped the foreign policy posture of most nations. For instance, if you look at what is happening in North Africa between Egypt and Ethiopia, the Nile passes through Ethiopia, Sudan to Egypt. Now, Ethiopia, because she needs a lot of power, she has been forced to dam the Nile. But Egypt has looked at this as an act of war because it will impede the flow of the Nile to Egypt. If you go historically, Egypt couldn't have been there without the Nile. So it is extremely vital for our survival and well-being. Sudan too is in the mix. And so it has generated conflict, almost pushing those three countries to the point of war. And when you have a country facing such challenges, then it becomes a problem. Like I said, in 1973, after the Yom Kippur War, the Arabs declared an oil embargo on Western Europe and America. And America was supposed to declare oil or access to oil as a vital interest. If a country describes anything as of vital interest to it, it means that that country is ready to go to war to defend that interest. And that's how important energy security is. But like I said, not all countries have equal opportunities, equal access, and availability of all these resources. So you have to do a whole combination of mixes. And like we said, there are the renewables and there are the conventional energy resources. Oil and gas on one hand, then you are talking about solar, which of course is available to some countries, but not as some others have it. Then you're also talking about hydroelectricity. And most rivers that flow don't just start and end within one national boundary. It cuts across many nations. So if you have to resort to that as a means of generating electricity, which is one of the cheapest and one of the most reliable, then it means that countries must have a bilateral or multilateral agreement where the resource can be jointly shared to mutual benefit of all. Like in Nigeria and Niger Republic, they allow us to dam the Niger, but when we generate electricity, we have to also make them have some of it. So we're not doing it as charity. It's not charity. It is our collective mutual interest. But where countries cannot have this kind of agreement, is bound to create conflict and crisis. So there's a direct linkage between energy security and global security.
All right, thank you so much. That was a very good analysis. Thank you so much, Commodore David Nabeda, for always coming on board. Energy plays an important role in the national security of any given country as a fuel to power the economic regime or engine. Some sectors rely on energy more heavily than others, just like the global affairs analysts have said. Energy security involves three critical variables. He talked about accessibility, availability, and affordability. That's it on Public Intel Global Affairs.